Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. This is the weekly Tottenham news review. I am Lee, the Dorset Spur, and I'm here to kind of give you my view, my take on some of the stories making the headlines over the last 7 days. There is a fair bit to get through today, so you're going to have to excuse me if it rambles on a little bit. But of course, this is driven by the fact that Tottenham played last night, and as you will well be aware, we lost 1-0 to Chelsea. The game did have its controversies. Both teams were denied a goal through VAR. Postecoglou was visibly upset about Tottenham's disallowed goal and how VAR was applied and so on. But yeah, so let's start off by kind of talking about that game. A bit of a difficult one. I guess, if I'm being brutally honest, I didn't really expect Tottenham to win. We have such a terrible, terrible record there. We haven't won there since 2018. And so we've they've had a hoodoo over us for such a long time. They even call the Tottenham Spurs Stadium 3-point lane and all this sort of stuff. And it feels to me like there is some kind of mental block within the club, because we're not talking about the same players that have been playing there for the last 40 years. You know, this is different players, week in, week out, year in, year out. And there always seems to be some kind of issue that stops us getting anything out of the game. My prediction for the game was a 2-1 loss, if I'm being honest. And I hate that because I'm a bit more of a happy clapper. I try to be very level-headed when dealing with all these kind of stories. But I just, as painful as it is to call out a loss, I felt that with everything kind of going against us, it just feels like this wasn't going to happen. Now, of course, it would be massively Spursy for us to have turned up there and actually had a win. But clearly wasn't to be. In terms of the team, I thought that the team looked good. Thought it looked strong. I liked the idea of Spence coming in. I thought that was good because it gave us an opportunity, if need be, to bring Porro into the game and move Spence to the left, having been in the game from the beginning, and then potentially giving Udogie a break or whatever. And maybe Porro would have been able to kind of bring some crossing ability into it. So when I kind of looked at it, I think the only one that seemed a bit more of a choice was around Odegaard or Johnson or potentially Tell. So for me, he went with Odegaard, which I thought was the good decision. It felt good, and I did feel that Odegaard, out of all of the players within the team, he's probably the one who could kind of hold his head up fairly well and say, well, I did as much as I could. I took people on, I worked hard for the team and so on. So bit of a surprise that he was one of the players taken out, but more on that a little bit later in the conversation. So yeah, happy with the team. Felt that we were going as strong as we probably could, and good to see Van der Ven and Romero making a start together back to see the game through. So I was kind of okay with it. I went on another channel and did a pretty-much bump up where it was kind of felt that this was a good option, and that there was some talk of maybe this being the one that starts the renaissance and kind of kicks us on. And we need to kind of gather some results if we're going to continue in the Europa League, because obviously winning games, it kind of, you start to roll from that point of view, in the same way that if you're losing games, that seems to roll as well and go against you. So the view very much was we should have gone in strong. There was, there was talk about whether we needed to rest players ahead of next week. I don't look at it like that. I personally think we should be really going for it and seeing where we end up at the end of this season. We're not going to get relegated, but there's still pride to play for. There's still continuity to play for and so on. So for me, strongest lineup, very good. Of course, as soon as the game started, it it gave us a different story. Long ball over the top, and Nicholas Jackson was straight on it. Between the two defenders, our best two defenders, I might add, running back towards goal. Vicario comes flying out as he needed to do, and luckily gets a little bit of a bounce off of it, hits Jackson's arm. So I'm not sure whether the goal would have been given anyway. But Van der Ven gets back and kicks the ball against Jackson, which then hits the post. So we're all in the club and we're getting a huge joint sigh of relief when that happened. But it kind of set the tone for the game. I felt that we were under the cosh for most of it. Certainly in the first half. There were little flashes of us getting the ball, but it just wasn't going anywhere. Chelsea were passing the ball well. They were pulling us onto them and playing around us all the time and creating opportunities for themselves. Really, really worried about Vicario. He kind of flapping around like a swan on a lake. You know, there was one in particular where he kind of came out and punched the ball that went nowhere, which was, you know, an easy catch actually. And I just didn't get that where he was coming from. His kicking was off as well, you know, pulling on danger to us all the time. Again, that kind of really worried me. So yeah, very, very worrying first half. Lucky to go in at half time 0-0. But then, of course, you come out second half and you know, fairly quickly in that half, a poor defensive showing allows Enzo to be in between the two defenders and a free header to put them 1-0 ahead. And at that point, we could kind of all feel like the floodgates were going to open, and that's where we were going to go, because previously we'd shown absolutely nothing. Shortly after that, of course, comes the first controversial point, where I think it was Caicedo hit the sweetest, or one of the sweetest strikes you'll see, to bury the ball for 2-0. Celebrated, you know, as you would expect when you're playing one of your biggest rivals, because that's what we are to Chelsea. We are their biggest rival for whatever reason. Only for it to be disallowed through VAR. Now, we were sat in the club, we were watching this, and it seemed to take an age for them to make a decision. And in my mind, I'm like, we're all sitting there, all like, it's a goal. It's a goal. Like, there's nothing in this. It's so tight that how can it be offside? It's that tight, you know, for any player who's kind of involved in it. The front player, I think, if you look down the line, there was a Chelsea player who looked in an offside position, but I don't think it was given against him. I think it was given against the player further back. And I'm not sure who that was because it was a pretty cloudy, distorted picture. But of course, as soon as it was disallowed, I'm over the moon. You know, I'll take it all day long when a decision like that goes for you. You accept it and you go, well, okay, I'm taking that because that's luck. You know, that's a bit of luck. That might be the luck we need that's going to allow us to get back into this game. And of course, you know, the Chelsea were very upset about that because that kind of puts the game to bed at that point. Did feel we started to come back into the game a little bit. There was some opportunities where we kind of pushed and tested and so on. I felt like at this point after that, Chelsea then started to kind of defend a little bit deeper, give us a little bit more of the ball. But we just were not clinical enough at all. I felt that we were, you know, very passive and so on, and we weren't getting anywhere. Of course, then comes the point where Ange Postecoglou makes his substitutions and he takes off Odegaard and he takes off Bergvall. And as I said at the beginning of this video, I thought Odegaard was playing really well. I thought he was the one bright light in there. And certainly in the midfield, I felt that Bergvall was the only one really showing anything. Of course, Maddison was like the invisible man yet again. Bentancur, didn't really see anything from him. Son was also not playing particularly well, not really getting anything going, not taking anyone on, not really putting any crosses in. So there was others to choose from in my mind than Odegaard and Bergvall. And I think that's where you see the fans getting frustrated, and there was boos ringing out around the stadium for that change. And also, chance of you don't know what you're doing. And of course, that must be quite hurtful. You don't want to hear that as the coach and everything. And maybe as the player, Sarr must have thought to himself, hold on a minute, what's going on here? I'm coming on, I'm part of this squad, I want to play well. And the same for Johnson. Now, I did think, okay, look, Johnson comes in, what does he bring that Odegaard doesn't bring? Arrival at the back post, to bag a goal. He's one of our top goal scorers. And if Son is able to kind of put a couple of balls across the box, then maybe that's where we see the benefit of Brennan Johnson. Me personally, I would have gone the other way. I'd have put Odegaard on the left, and I'd have taken Son off, and I'd have felt that would have probably worked a little bit better. You might have got that goal from Johnson. So a little bit disappointed about that. And as I say, Sarr coming in, I like Sarr, but again, for me, he's not consistent enough. I worry about his consistency in games. Some games he's okay, some games he's really good, some games he kind of goes missing. And when you've got the other two missing in there, I was just a bit worried about it. But I can understand not taking off Maddison, even though I've just said that he was invisible, because he's the only one in there who's got any kind of creativity. So if you take him out, the creativity's gone and you've got nothing. So I kind of get it. I understand it, but for me, I kind of think maybe we could have asked Bergvall to be a little bit more adventurous in absence of Maddison, and that could have worked because, I say, young guy working hard and so on. But anyway, the fans are calling him out. You don't know what you're doing and all that kind of stuff. Of course, it's not long after that, 4 minutes, I believe, that Sarr buries the ball with a great strike, absolutely great strike. Felt the keeper should have done better, to be honest with you. He hit his arm and then went up into the roof of the net. And we've got our luck. We've got our luck back, right? So they've had a goal disallowed. We've got our luck back, and we're back in the game. A draw. I'll take it all day long, and all the rest of it. And of course, then when that's called for VAR, you're fearing the worst, and you look at it and you think, yeah. As soon as I've seen it, I'm like, okay, seems a little bit soft to the extent that the Chelsea player is going to shield the ball. So he's kind of turning and trying to get his body in the way. And Sarr's come through to nick the ball. So the idea of, or the point of the Chelsea player going in this direction and Sarr going that direction, he's clipped him. I don't think there was an intention from Sarr to take him out. I don't think there was an intention in Sarr to kick him or anything like that. It's just an unfortunate coming together. But when you saw it, certainly in the kind of like the third angle they showed from front onwards, it looked like a foul straight away. And we're like, yeah, they're going to disallow that straight away. But then, of course, it went on for an absolute age. And I'm like, well, maybe they're looking at it from an intention point of view then. Maybe we are going to get this. He's studying it so much that potentially they're saying it's not really a foul. Maybe he just did nick the ball first. Maybe it's the Chelsea player putting himself in that position that's created that. So you're kind of sitting there with your fingers crossed hoping. And then, of course, no, that's not the case. The case is they're going to give a foul, which you could see straight away. And then, you're back to 1-0 down. And of course, it's an uphill struggle all the way through it. It's at this point that Ange is cupping his ears to the Tottenham fans and giving them a little bit of stick back, as if to say, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing, eh? Now, he's denied that. He's saying, no, that's not what his intention. His intention was to say, come on, let's hear you. Well, there's other ways of doing that. There's, yes, come on, those sorts of gestures. So I don't believe Ange for a moment that that's the case. I believe that he's trying to, send a message. You've got to trust in what I'm doing. And of course, that's created even more controversy for Ange. It's lost him an awful lot more supporters again, because people will take that and go, how dare you have a go at fans when you've lost 16 games in the Premier League this season? And you can't blame it all on injuries. We didn't have injured players last night. We had our best, strongest team out. And yet the play and the performance was lacklustre, poor, Key players were missing. Our tactics were poor, playing out from the back, tic-tacking around and all the rest of it. There was a lack of aggression in the midfield. There was nothing happening in there. Now, these players have to take some responsibility for this. This isn't all on Ange, in my opinion. But he's got to demand more from these guys. This is Chelsea. This is Tottenham, Chelsea in the Premier League. You're fighting for pride. You're fighting for pride of your team, pride of your fans, pride of your manager. You're trying to keep him in the job and all the rest of it. And yet we got none of that, in my opinion. I felt the team was really, really, really poor. And you know, I was just really, really disappointed with it, but not surprised. So yeah, so that's my overall take on it. Of course, we're now coming up. We've got Southampton at the weekend. So another really big game in the Premier League. Although we're not going anywhere, but it's another game, another one we need to win to build that momentum. And of course, if you lose to Southampton, one of the worst Premier League teams ever, then that's, you know, that makes it even harder for Ange to sustain any kind of credibility at this point. So anyway, you know, fingers crossed that we move on to that game and we can get a result there and start building results after that. Like I say, Chelsea, potentially a given that we weren't going to win there, but still disappointing in the manner of the defeat. It's only 1-0, but in the manner of the defeat, it was really, really disappointing and poor from the players, and poor attitude from Ange in the way he's kind of conducted himself around the fans and kind of around the media after that. So yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at with the match review. So sorry that's taken a bit of time because there obviously is other stuff to go through. I guess I do want to touch on a couple of things from the Postecoglou's pre-match news conference. I felt, if I'm being honest, and this is bear in mind, this is prior to the game, asking him questions about Pochettino, I thought was a real lack of respect for him as a manager. And I know a lot of people will go, well, why should we respect him? He's a clown and blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, this is a guy in a job, doing his job, being fronted out by people trying to do a gotcha. In the same way his post-match interview was really trying to push him to kind of call out the officials and everything else, which will get him in trouble. I do feel like the media have got this attitude of really trying to get these, because he talks honestly and openly most of the time. I think it makes for great headlines and great clickbait for a lot of these news outlets and all the rest of it. So, but I thought that was a real disappointment how they kind of phrased that and asked him about that in that kind of way. I just didn't like that at all. He was asked as well about Romero going and playing 180 minutes for Argentina, and whether that was a problem. Bear in mind, he'd not played 90 minutes, or he wasn't kind of playing full matches and so on for us prior to this. He'd been out for a long time. To go out there and win win and play 2 games it was quite a lot. But Ange Postecoglou was confident. He said it was a good decision. He was happy with the decision. It gave Romero a couple of good opportunities to really stretch his legs and get those minutes under his belt, which I kind of understand. I do kind of understand that. But then I think to myself, well, we want him to do that for us, right? We're the ones who pay his wages. We're the ones who should be getting the benefit of this, this top player, which he is a top player. So yeah, I understand where he's coming from it, and this is me. I'm trying to be level-headed in terms of giving my take on some of these stories. But then I guess I don't know what else he could have said as well. If he'd have said no, I wasn't very happy about it. We need to take it careful with him. Then he's calling out Argentina and so on, and that's kind of probably not a good place to be. But Fortunately, Romero did play the full 90 for Tottenham in the Chelsea game. So in my mind now, he should be back in the squad, all the time now and playing 90 minutes all the way through. We shouldn't be worried about him from that point of view. He is fully fit. Talking about unfit players, of course, Kulu and Danso are both still not back, and he said that they would be training possibly next week. So they're a couple of weeks away, going to getting back to training with the full squad, and that Kulu was out of the boot and so on, which is really good news, because he is one player who we really do miss, especially with Maddison going missing. He's the one player you can kind of put in there and get a level of creativity in the team. So I'd be really, really happy to have him back. I'm not sure he's going to be back in time for Frankfurt. It doesn't sound like it. Potentially the second leg, the away leg, which would be probably the more important one, depending on how we get on next Thursday. So, that's an option. Danso, not so much of an issue, given that Romero is now fit. But of course, Van de Ven did go off last night. Looked like he took a knock. Doesn't look like it's a muscle thing. I haven't seen an update yet. So potentially that is just a knock. And if that is the case, then you take it off as a precaution, and with Spence going in and taking his place. But that's not such an issue. We have still got Archie Gray. Even Spence can go into that position, showing his versatility and his ability to kind of fit in and do whatever is asked of him. So yeah, that was so that's the injury update on those two. Richarlison as well is back training with the squad fully, and was out for the Chelsea game. Not a bit too soon, but potentially back for the weekend, which would be good. It would be good to have him as an option, because again, another one who can play left side, can play up front, and maybe the situation calls for it that we get Richarlison and Solanke on at the same time. Maybe they will be able to get some level of partnership together, because we're asking an awful lot of Solanke, who I felt worked really, really hard in the Chelsea game, but actually got absolutely nothing from any kind of support or anything in that game, and spent a lot of time in his own half trying to get the ball and to make something happen. So it would be good to have Richarlison back to give us something of an option. And I know it's not been a great option the whole time, which kind of brings me on to one of the other stories that was talked about, was around Richarlison being offered out. Well, not offered out. He was asked about his availability for Flamengo in Brazil, looking at bid like £16 million for him, which was flatly turned down. Totally understand that. We paid $60 million for this guy. There's no way you can let him go for $16 million. If they want to pay $16 million and have him as on a loan, yeah, I'd take that. But £16 million for him, I know he's been injured an awful lot, but if this guy can get a level of fitness back, then I think there'll be other Premier League clubs that would take him. And I think if he left Tottenham, you'd probably find his luck would change totally, and it would work out okay for him. And he would then get the opportunities to play and so on. So yeah, for me, I would have turned that down flatly. And I think Richarlison doesn't want to go back to Brazil yet. I still feel like he has the self-belief and the motivation to try to make something happen in the Premier League, to build his reputation back, because I think his reputation has been really hurt with his time at Tottenham, which is disappointing for him as a player. That's not a good look. A couple of other things that were kind of come up in the press conference. He kind of talked about the interview he did. Was it Opta with Mark Schwarzer, where he was kind of talking about Romero and Van de Ven coming into the previous Chelsea game and both going out injured, and kind of defending himself around the fact that it wasn't just his decision for them to play. You're talking about the medical staff and the recuperation staff and all that sort of stuff. And also the fact that Romero's injury was a toe injury, And then when he went off, he had a different injury. So you can't really say, oh, he was rushed back if it's a different injury. Van der Ven passed all the tests. He did everything he was supposed to do. They could have rested him, and then if he comes in the next game, would he have got injured in the next game? So I have thought that personally myself. Like I say, I've said it before, I'll say it again, trying to be level-headed, trying to be sensible about the fact. Ange Postecoglou is not going to be allowed to risk players' careers by stubbornly just chucking someone in. This isn't the 90s and the 80s where they would just be given a pain injection and say, get on with it. This is massive financial impact for losing players and so on. So it kind of made sense what he was saying from that point of view. And I think it was worth saying. I don't think he was doing it to save his own reputation. I think he was answering the question because it's being put out there a lot. And I think it was one of those things that probably needed to be addressed because the implication is he just chucked them out there regardless of of whether they were fit or not. And I just never believed that was the case. And it was good to kind of hear that take on it and to understand that there is a level in there where, you know, you have to pass certain points to actually be able to be classed as fit and so on. So yeah, I thought that was an interesting one. He was also asked when we talk about the Pochettino thing, and he kind of went, look, if Mauricio Pochettino wants to come back to this club and that's his desire at some point, he hopes that will happen for him. And I think, you know, fair enough. Difficult question to answer because I don't think Pochettino was baiting to get Postecoglou's job because he's got a job and so on. I think he was answering a question that was posed to him, and I think Ange probably sees it that way. But it is a disrespectful thing to do. I thought it was a disrespectful thing for getting their names mixed up, Pochettino, to even be talking about it at this point, given the pressure that Postecoglou's under. But having done that, I thought it was disrespectful of the journalist to kind of push onto it. And then they also talked about him being under pressure, telling him he's under pressure and, you know, and all the rest of it. And he said, if the club decides to go in a different direction, then I'm sure there are some very good candidates out there that could do the job and so on. And of course, everyone's talking about people like Iriola, Frank, Silva, Dressler, is it, or whatever. But I guess my point around this is, and I'm not saying that Ange has to stay or anything like that, but at this point in the season, I'm looking at these other candidates, right? So Bournemouth have just lost to Ipswich, right? And that's 4 losses in 5 with 1 draw. Brentford lost to Newcastle, and Palace drew at Southampton, and Fulham lost to Arsenal. Right, so okay, you'd probably expect Fulham to lose at Arsenal, but Palace, you know, playing really well this season, getting themselves, you know, towards the FA Cup final, fantastic for them. But drawing against Southampton, so that kind of says, you know, I guess the point is, at some point, any team can beat any team or get a result against any team, and every team can go through difficult times. So I always think you've got to be careful what you wish for. I just don't think any of those managers are a massive upgrade on Postecoglou. Now, you can disagree with that, and you probably will. But my point is, at this moment in time, they are all unproven. None of them have won anything or done anything in particular that suggests that they could get a better tune out of these players than Postecoglou can now. So for me, I still think it's a risk, and I think ultimately, if we go out of the Europa in like a month's time, then in my view, if you want to let Postecoglou go, let him go. But ultimately, I think you may as well just go to the end of the season and get a clean break then to decide who's available, who's a better option, and where do we go from there. I just, you haven't got nothing to lose. You've got nothing to lose. I don't think any of those would leave their clubs now to come to Tottenham. I don't believe that Ryan Mason would be able to do a better job than Postecoglou, bearing in mind he's one of the coaches coaching this bloody team. So, I don't see the benefit of that. And I know that's been muted. And the other one that's been muted is Harry Redknapp, who, to be honest with you, I think Harry Redknapp could probably come in and do something. I really do. I really do think that because of the type of character he is and the type of personality he is. I think he would probably be able to come in and really invigorate the squad and get a bounce. But from a long-term point of view, is that the option? Is that what we really need? I don't think so. I don't think so. So yeah, so that kind of covers off the kind of pre-match, the pre-match press conference. The other really kind of big thing, I guess, to talk about, of course, and I've left it kind of right towards the end, is the finances and Daniel Levy's comments. That's kind of created an awful lot of churn and an awful lot of talk, and quite rightly so. So Tottenham had a £528 million decrease in revenue, at 4% increases in losses to £26.2 million loss. But actually, that loss is less than we lost in the previous year, right? And most of this is driven by the fact that we wasn't in any kind of European competition. We didn't go very far in any of the cup competitions, and so there was less games and so on. And that reduces the revenue. And of course, Daniel Levy points out that the non-football revenue is what is subsidising the football inside. We've spent £700 million since opening the stadium. Okay, I get all that. I get all that, Daniel, and he's talking about making smart and sustainable purchases. I'm just reading it off my notes. Smart, sustainable purchases, and that financial stability is a priority, and they will not spend what they don't have. Okay, that's fine, right? I get all that. I get all that. But you're asking us to pay the highest season ticket prices for a substandard product, with no opportunity to see glory or anything of that nature. You talk about making smart, sustainable purchases, and yet at the same time, we're bringing in players, and we've brought in players that have been absolute rubbish. Some of these problems are problems of your own making. The amount of money that we've had to pay out over the years for constantly changing managers, for instance, for purchasing players that are not suited to the manager, for purchasing players that are just not good enough. I mean, you talk about, and there was also this. I'm going to digress slightly, but there was also this talk about the wage percentage that decreasing, because obviously we're bringing in younger players and all the rest of it. So that if you're paying the higher wages, you're getting the better players. Whilst that might be true to a certain extent, you might be able to attract certain players from that point of view. You've got to be in for them first, right? You can pay that sort of money, but then when you look at people like Timo Werner, who has our highest paid player, they're paying that guy absolute mega money, but that doesn't equate to good performance from that player. On Ndombele, the money we've wasted on him and giving him away, Lo Celso, Brian Hill, it goes on and on and on. The list goes on and on and on about how poor the purchases have been for what we've got from it. Even if you look at the squad today, if you look at Maddison, Maddison for me at this moment in time seems like a poor purchase, because he's done nothing for this team that's really stand out. And I really liked Maddison. I really wanted him to come to the club. I thought he was the right sort of player that we needed, someone who can do some creativity. But I'm not seeing that from him. So again, it's another really poor purchase. So you can't Daniel Levy can't sit there and go, we spent £700 million and we've got to get the right players and all the rest of it. That's your responsibility. That's why you brought in Paratici. That's why you brought in Langer, you know, and so on. Now, you've got to take responsibility for that. You know, you're talking about we can't spend what we don't have. Well, maybe take a bit of a pay cut then, mate. You know, you're taking a mega amount of money, more money than anybody, any other chairman of any other club. Do you really deserve it? Is that a deserved? You know, I just, it just kind of beggars belief. And the way it's kind of put across is really disrespectful to the fans. It's almost a smack in the face saying, like it or lump it. This is what we're doing. We're going in this direction, and that's what we're going to do. Like it or lump it. And we do lump it. We have to lump it because we don't have a choice. We don't have a voice. And it's interesting that this has kind of come out and he's made this statement ahead of the Southampton game where I am aware of the change for Spurs or change for Tottenham. March is going to happen, and I suspect this will be even bigger than the last one, which was really successful. He's kind of put it out there to try to kind of placate people and calm them down a little bit. That's not going to work. That's not going to wash. This has been 20 odd years of the same thing in a different day, you know, and we are heading for another, you know, 2-year project. You know, Postecoglou will undoubtedly lose his job at the end of the season, if not before. And then we are back in that cycle again of trying to find a coach who can work within the constraints that the club is putting upon them, which is we buy youth and we develop and all the rest of it, and we're not buying ready-made players to supplement it, and it's going to take years for us to get there. And if those players actually get any kind of value, we're happy to sell them on and so on. That's not what the fans want. And I'm sure that's the same for all clubs. And there are lots of clubs out there, you know, you look at your Brightons maybe and say, you know, they're doing it the right way. They never win anything, but their fans are happy because they play decent football and they keep unearthing these gems and so on and so forth. And that's maybe the model he wants to go down. But that's not what football's about. And if you want more money through the turnstiles, and you want more money spent, then you've got to give the fans the good times. You know, we got Postecoglou complaining last season that there wasn't enough games, and that's what causes a problem. This season he's complaining there's too many games, and that's what's causing a problem. We went in too hard at the beginning of the season. Okay, so what does that mean? Oh, we played players too early. You know, they come back, they didn't really have a break, and then we've got international football at the same time, and of course we're playing in Europe, and we underestimate. How can you underestimate that? At the end of the season, last season, you knew you got, you know, Europa League. You still got the cup competitions, which are always there. Potentially you could win a couple of those games. So you've got to have the players that you need there. So in the end, at the beginning of the season, did you rotate enough? No, clearly not. Did you give the players the opportunity that you needed to when you had that opportunity? Clearly not. And that's the difficult bit. That's the difficult balance of it. But now, you know, we're in danger again of not winning the Europa and being out of Europe, not getting, of course, the prize for that is Champions League. So next season we'll be back to the same scenario where we'll only have one game a week, so your revenue is going to go down again. So you need to speculate to accumulate. If you want to be in the Champions League, you've got to get Champions League level players available to be in there. But we don't want just to be in it. We want to win it. That's the point. The point of being in the Champions League is to win the Champions League, not to just participate. You know, and that's the difficult part of it. And it doesn't matter how you kind of ring it and how you kind of say it. You know, financially, great to be a financially stable club, but you don't see any of these other unfinancially stable clubs getting any kind of problem. You know, they're not getting. You know, they're not sitting 15th, 16th in the table. They're not losing all their 14th rather, 15 or 16 games losses. They're not having that problem. You know, they're not having the injury crisis that we're having. And of course, then you've got Newcastle gone on and won their first trophy in 70 years. So, you know, I'm just not buying it, Daniel. And I think, you know, it's all well and good quoting all these numbers and so on. it's not going to change anything. And I've never been one to complain about the different things that are happening at the stadium when we're not playing football. I've got no problem with that. If that's all going to go into the pot, then that's absolutely fine. And what you're saying is that is what is subsidising the football, because revenue was down last season and so on. But it'll be up again this season because we went further in the Carabao Cup. We did better in the FA Cup up to a point. We have gone longer in Europe. So, hopefully you will have a bit more money in the bank. And if we do win the Europa League and you get Champions League money, are you then going to chuck that in there? Because we're talking about an awful lot of money. So, there are people out there that are far better placed to talk about the financials and what the real story is behind that. I did see a tweet by someone, I can't think what his name was, who kind of went through it all and talked about how the debt is financed in a way that is really cheap. We've got a tied-in mortgage type thing for the stadium spend, which gives us a 3%, I think 3% interest rate, which means that we're paying out something in the region of sort of 30 to 40 million pound in interest, which is not a lot on that kind of build. And the rest of it is financed through bonds and so on that kind of mature at different times, so it's risk-free and so on. So there's some smart stuff being done in terms of the debt management of the stadium and so on. But that was going to be a game changer. The stadium was going to be a game changer. You've pretty much doubled your capacity for people going to the game, and it's sold out most games. Regardless. And like I say, most expensive season tickets in the Premier League. So, I find it very difficult to get my violin out and play you a tune, Daniel, and feel sorry for you. You need to do more. You need to back a manager. You need to get a manager that you trust, that you want to stick with, and you need to back them. And if that's going to be Ange Postecoglou, I don't think it is, but if that is going to be Ange Postecoglou, don't just keep giving him these young kids. You need to give him some ready-made players that are going to improve this squad now to give us the opportunity to kind of move on. Anyway, I'm rambling on, and I'm conscious of time. So if you're with me so far, thank you for listening so far. Couple of other things. It has now been confirmed that Tottenham are going to play Arsenal in Hong Kong. Really interesting when you're talking about the impact of games and how many games you're playing, international football, 2 cup competitions, Europa League, you're complaining about all that, and yet when the season, before the season starts, you're going to fly the players halfway around the world to play a game against your local rivals in Hong Kong to obviously increase your coffers and spread the word out there. And I understand all the reasons around that, but again, you can't have it both ways. You can't complain about the amount of games players are playing and the travelling that they're doing, going to South America or Asia to play in the different competitions and everything, and then just take everybody off across the world to do something similar because it benefits you. So a little bit of hypocrisy there. But it'll be the first time that the North London derby has been played outside of North London. So I'm sure that'll be an interesting one. I think Arsenal, someone pointed out that Arsenal probably have a massive following in Asia because of them being red and white, and red being a massive thing out in Asia. Really lucky colour and everything else. That's why AIA are in red. And actually their headquarters is in Hong Kong, because I've been there and I've seen it. So that's my take on that. Semi-automated offsides, that's something that's coming in towards the end of the season. Last 7 games, is that this weekend? I'm not sure. If it's anything better than what happened last night against Chelsea, then maybe that's the answer, because what they're doing at the moment just isn't. I'm not sure of the technology. I'm not sure how it works. I did kind of do a little bit of a video looking at it, looking at some videos of it, and it appears that there is a sensor in the ball, and there are cameras all around the stadium that are pinpointed to each player in certain points that are likely to influence the offside decision. And basically it will know, it flags the time the ball is struck, and then it measures the furthest distance forward the opposition and the defensive player, and determines straight away whether that player is ahead or not. Now, that's supposedly going to happen very, very quickly to save all the VAR sort of stuff, although it will still go to VAR for someone to make a decision. So they're going to speed it up and give them the information, but then they've still got to look at it and make a decision. So I'm not convinced that that's going to make a big change as well, but we'll see. Finally, Fabio Paratici may be going back to AC, or going off to AC Milan. I don't know what to take on that. I know he's kind of been working off the books and so on, and I think he has brought some decent players to Tottenham. When you think about Prime Bentancur and Kulusevski and Vicario, I think might be part of it. Udogie, so there has been some hits. There's obviously been some misses as well. But yeah, I'm not sure. I don't believe that it's going to make a massive difference. Obviously, we've got Langer in there at the moment, who seems to be kind of unearthing a few gems with Gray and Bergvall, Kinski and so on. So yeah, I don't have big concerns over Paratici going if that's the case. I think I did have a lot of respect for him. I thought he did a fairly decent job. He liked to have lots and lots of options, which I thought was a good way to go, a smart way to go, to keep all the balls in the air at the same time to try to figure out the best decisions that you're going to get. So all good from that point of view. We'll see how that kind of pans out. I mean, there is still talk. I'm still seeing rumours that he's still coming back to Tottenham. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. And then the very, very final thing is just to say congratulations to Heung-min Son, who has been voted South Korea Player of the Year for a record 8th time. Not surprising, really. I mean, he is a fantastic footballer, a fantastic role model, and so on. It's just disappointing that he's not really getting that at the moment, and to a certain extent, I'm worried that his legacy will be impacted the longer he stays on. That maybe it's time for him to kind of leave while his stock is still high, which would be disappointing because I wouldn't really want to see him go, but I really need to see him coming back to the levels that he's been at previously, that we can really, really rely on. And him saying that last week that he's fit and in the best shape of his life is a big concern, unless it's just the tactics just don't suit him and he needs to play in a different way, and in which case he needs to have that conversation with his manager, and his manager needs to be honest with him about what he needs to get from him. But yeah, so anyway, listen, I've rambled on. I've gone on a little bit longer than we have been doing it. So I hope that you've been able to follow it all the way to the end. I appreciate it if you have. If you've enjoyed the video, it would be really great if you could give us a thumbs up. If you've got any comments about anything that I've said today, good or bad, I'm happy to have them all. Please leave them in the comment section below. And of course, if you're not subscribed to Chris's channel, please do that. Please hit that subscribe button for him. I have my own channel, Leader Dorset Spur. I do a live show on a Tuesday evening, and I do a game review after each game. So if you're interested in seeing more from me, please head over to Leader Dorset Spur and give me a follow on there, and let me know how you feel I'm doing from that point of view as well. But anyway, as always, thanks for watching. Appreciate the support. I'll leave it there. But as always, up the Spurs.